Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com. Is Venezuela a failed state? Well, we're going to answer that on this video. Now, first, let's define what a failed state is. And according to the Wikipedia, the term is employed by journalists and commentators to describe a sovereign state that has failed to provide basic service to their population. So, on right off the bat, it smells like a failed state. So, now there's many key indicators that tells if a country is a failed state or no. So let's review one by one. So let's start by political corruption. Well, that's a tricky one. And according, of course, with these NGOs, Transparency International and related NGOs and institutions and international institutions and such, Venezuela is a very corrupt country. However, I have to say that it's not defending the local authorities. However, every politician is pretty much corrupt. Of course, what it changes between country and country is the degree of corruption. And according to many estimates, Transparency International and such, yes, Venezuela is pretty much very corrupt. Number two, we have overpopulation and pollution. In that regard, actually Venezuela is not overpopulated. Actually, we lost a bunch of people, around 7 million people on the last decade that migrated from the country. So we are less populated than a decade before. And the other thing is pollution. Well, Venezuela is not the cleanest place. I mean, it's not the favorite place of Greta Thunberg. However, a polluted place is kind of on the middle. So, for that regard, no, it's not a failed state. Number three, we have terrorism and drug trafficking. For one hand, we pretty much don't have any terrorism activities. We don't have Al Qaeda or ISIS or something like that. We don't have something like some event like 9/11 or the thing that happened on the subway on Madrid or in London, something like that. It also happened in London. So we don't have terrorist attacks. We don't have 9/11. We don't have random acts of terrorist violence, especially organized terrorist organizations that does these kind of activities. On the contrary, we don't have terrorism here in Venezuela, thank God. Now, drug trafficking, according to many estimates and things that you listen, and the local authorities that also mention that is all the time some shipment of drugs and such that is confiscated on the roads and such, and many things that you might read or rumors and such. Yes, we have some drug trafficking activity. So, in this regard, I'll say is on the middle, is 50-50. So, number four, we have high levels on informality, poverty, and extreme poverty. So the informality level here in Venezuela, especially on the businesses, yes, we have a lot of informality. And for the other hand, we have high rates of poverty and also extreme poverty. However, those rates are being steadily declining since the past few years, according to the ENCOBI, that is this National Economic Study of Living Conditions that is done here in Venezuela, done by a very important university, the UCAB. According to that estimate, actually the poverty rate in Venezuela is still high, but it's been steadily declining. So in that regard, I'm gonna give it a 50. So number five, we have great part of the population living on informal housing. So, on that regard, most people own their own homes. They live on, let's say, decent properties, small apartments, some houses and such. And of course, we have people on slums. They have this convoluted and informal and this very precarious, if I call it like that, housing that they just build something on a hill, something like that, or they build this pretty much awful shacks and ranches. We have some people living like that, but I will say it's a minority. Even the poorest people here in Venezuela have a decent house to live. Probably it's not the biggest concern for most people in Venezuela. For some people, it is, I have to say. I'm going to give it a 50-50 as well. Number six, we have economic crisis, inflation, unemployment. Well, last decade was rough, to say the least, something around 80% of GDP contraction, although on the past few years had been steadily growing the Venezuelan economy. However, still it was a rough economic crisis, high levels of inflation, and although the unemployment is being steadily declining, I'm gonna give it this point to yes, it's a failed state economy, I have to say. Number seven, we have talent drain. In Venezuela, we had a migration of 7 million people, although, according to some estimates, 1 million of those 7 million, they are coming back to the country, they are being repatriated, that talent drain. But still, we suffer a huge talent drain on the country, so on that regard, yes, Venezuela is a failure. Number eight, we have a pretty low percentage of the people that are properly educated. On that regard, Venezuela actually has a high percentage of the population, of the adult population, highly educated. I said that all the time. We have great human resources here. We have a lot of STEM graduates like myself. I'm an engineer. And we have a bunch of doctors and lawyers and accountants and dentists and technicians or such and programmers, IT, you name it, digital marketing, you want to call that high skill. So we have high skilled people, and on that regard, Venezuela is not a bad country. Number nine, incomplete basic education. Well, like I said, most people here in Venezuela are educated. However, we are having some issues that some people, the people with less purchasing power, also don't have full access to the education. They are a minority, but it is a big minority. There is some issue with that. So I'm going to give it a 50-50 on that regard. Number 10, we have physical territory losses and unability to maintain the monopoly of violence. Of course, you know that any sovereign state has full control of its own territory and also the monopoly on violence. That means that the government and the security forces held all the guns. It's most likely the case the Venezuelan government controls pretty much the whole territory and has pretty much the monopoly on violence. The average Venezuelan doesn't have access to guns and such, and of course there are some criminal gangs and such. They they do own guns. However, for the most part, the Venezuelan government has control of the territory and also the monopoly of violence. So I'm gonna check. Number 11, the inability to supply public services. Well, on that regard, it's a tough one because the Venezuelan authorities managing the public services are pretty much terrible, especially because most of the public services are public, are not private. However, the trend is been going up. The public services here in Venezuela have been improving. However, they are far from perfect. So I'm gonna give it, a 50. And the last one is the inability to interact with other states as a full member of the international community. Well, that's a tricky one, and here's what happened. Since between 2014 and 2017, the Venezuelan government has a very question about the elections and the protest, and they have some political prisoners and such. And the biggest issue for the Venezuelan government was on 2019 when Juan Guaido, the opposition leader, was recognized as a president of Venezuela by the United States and 60 other countries. Most of such countries are United States allies. And however, that position diluted, and right now the local government is pretty much fully recognized as the authority of Venezuela. They're on the United Nations and the Organization of American States, and they are pretty much recognized by the United States government itself, by Joe Biden and such. So they're recognized internationally. They're not isolated. So on that regard, no, not a failed state. So doing the math right now with these 11 indicators, three indicators said that yeah, Venezuela is a failed state. Four indicators said that Venezuela is not a failed state, and the rest is a 50-50. So my conclusion, reading this stuff, is that Venezuela is a failed state? No, but barely. Now, you might say that Venezuela on the years 2017 and 2018, when the situation was the worst, you might argue that on those years, Venezuela was trending to become a failed state. However, I can say right now, Venezuela has a lot to fix, especially on the Venezuelan government. However, no, Venezuela is not a failed state right now. Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.